and his was on fire. Oh wait, look at that! The thing says we're alive, but hey guys, what's going on? Memes here, and I'm actually brought on MC because he had asked me if I was interested in streaming, which I replied. Uh, oh my god, I'm yelling in my own ears. Oh my god, it's okay. We're noobs. These things happen. It's not like we've ever done this before. Uh, no, but essentially, there's a lot of stuff going on in this Internet of Stuff and things right now. And essentially, we have this whole Last of Us 2 situation. We have this thing with Naughty Dog, Sony, and apparently the third-party contractor, MUSO Entertainment. And again, just to catch folks up that might not be aware of essentially the situation. But apparently, within about the past month or so, The Last of Us 2, somebody there may or may not have been hacked. Again, my conspiracy hypothesis is that somebody forgot to use a VPN. And again, you can visit hidewithtim.com if you need a VPN. I hear Tim Pool, he's been one of his longest vendors. I am not getting paid for this, but feel free to support Tim at hidewithtim.com if this is the situation. But essentially what happened is somebody ended up hacking into getting access to, I believe it was a March/April build of The Last of Us 2, and they more or less put everything out online, including a whole bunch of cutscenes, this, that, and the other thing, and people going kind of a bit nutty bananas over the whole situation and what's going on, and then a number of YouTubers start talking about it, and I think some people may or may not have shared some of the video. I believe some strikes happened. Also, at certain points, some people may have showed some still images, basically that were pirated images from a yet-to-be-released game. Okay, so that happened. And then some folks apparently were just giving their opinions and kind of getting struck down. And that's not cool if that's the case. However, I've been trying to figure out, is this just like a mass, just looking for anybody talking about this situation and just striking them down? A complete abuse of the YouTube copyright system? Or could there be more at play? Because within some of these situations, some folks have been reading and sharing articles. And one thing that I noticed, and I believe it was the Bounding into Comics article at one point, in the article, somebody said that you could, as I fade in and out of existence, I are the Dargan, but basically within this article, they said you can see gameplay below. So I went to that, and at that point, this was probably almost a week after the situation started, I actually noticed there was no footage below there. There was just a standard Google ad. And that made me to start to think, I'm like, I remember listening to Mara Jade, or in this case, Jade Shadow. Her copy strike actually still stands, and she had appealed. Apparently, she spoke with Mr. Ryan Kinnell at RK Outpost, who had submitted his, and I believe a strike had been lifted for the one that he had challenged there. Her strike still stood, and I remember listening to her video. I only watched, I think, the first part and listened to the rest, and she was showing an article, and I'm not sure if in there, or at least in the Bounding into Comics one, if there was a video, whether it was listed on their website, whether it was a YouTube link or something, even if it was just a still image there, do they have the ability, again, neither of us are attorneys, to potentially try to claim copyright or MC, and again, oh, hey everybody, this is MC. Say hello, MC.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. But essentially, based upon your knowledge, having time within military intelligence, is there technology available that may go around and just look for any type of little image or anything that may appear there? So, MC, what say you?
Of course there is.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that technology has existed for quite a while, actually, that does comparisons. But the problem that you're dealing with in this case, right, is like you said, it's multifold, right?
Yeah.
First of all, this is obviously an inside job.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Now, why do I say that? Okay, it is obvious to me that the leaked game, all right, somebody had to A, know that the game was being produced, B, had to know the game was in an area in order to go around and target it. Okay, even if you're playing the game of, well, he didn't use a VPN, which the VPNs are not the end all beat all that people think they are, but I'm not going to go into that either. The thing is that somebody had to know that person was doing something with this, all right, in order to actually target it, which means they were either given inside information, all right, or they released it themselves. The creator.
That was an initial theory. Basically, the rumor that was going around at the time was that folks were very discouraged due to a very heavy end of game crunch time there, and with this whole pandemic going on, a lot of folks basically wanted to either have an advance on their bonuses because apparently the game was delayed for a little while longer. So it was alleged that some higher ups ended up getting an advance on their bonuses. Other folks ended up getting pissed off because they didn't, and then somebody leaked the game. So,
well, why wouldn't you look at this from the perspective of a marketing ploy?
Oh, I mean, maybe. I mean, that could also be a potential. Again, nobody truly knows. It's just at least Sony has made a statement saying that this was essentially the way it was explained to me is in one of the previous games, because Last of Us 2, this is a game that the first one was extremely popular. This one, basically, a lot of folks were excited for because it's been about 7 years or so since the initial release. So there was a lot of built-up desire and everything. We've also gone further into the quote-unquote culture war and everything. So many decisions there are always going to be criticized heavily. But essentially, in one of the previous games that was released, there was essentially a backdoor exploit that Sony has basically explained, or at least somebody was reporting on it, that somebody gained access through an unsecure backdoor in one of the previous games, and they exploited that and were able to gain the content that they did. Again, this is as far as I understand it from what I've heard.
An exploit can be found by people, but generally exploits are intentional, that are created by someone within the environment that to make their lives from programming perspectives easier. So the idea, right, and basically it's to prevent them from locking themselves out accidentally, right? That's the white hat version of that, okay? The black hat version of it is people do it so that if it gets absconded on and they don't like something, they can always go in and do nefarious things if they so desire to in the background. All right, programmers are programmers. All right, that doesn't mean that they're saints. That doesn't mean that they're devils. It means that they're just human beings. However, all right, in this case here, the way you're looking at it right now, if you take a look at how this seems to have spread, to me, I think this had more to do with the fact that in the gaming community as a whole, let's be perfectly honest here, all right, and this is, I'm talking about this from my impression. I don't follow really gaming news all that closely. I don't follow entertainment news really all that closely. But from my perspective, as I'm looking at this, the gaming community, the gaming groups have been having issues with negative press, all right, concerning all their releases. And it has hampered a lot of the new releases that people have been expecting. All right. In this case, all right, I don't know much about this game. When you said it was very popular, okay, but I had never heard of the game before, so it hadn't reached my level of consciousness. All right, now once again, I'm not a follower of this, but if you're going to put a game out there to get people to play it, and especially if you're trying to get revenue, you got to get new people to come into the fold. You got to get other people that you got to reach a broader audience than what you've normally been able to do.
Right.
The way to do that is to create a controversy. All right, and that's what this obviously has created, is a controversy. All right, this is why I say these factors all play into the idea that this had to have been an inside job. Now, I'm not saying it was intentional per se, but I'm saying that there's somebody within the organization that was responsible for leaking this for whatever reason they utilized.
So you think that this was literally just a marketing ploy or something like this potentially?
I think that's something that can't be ignored. Now, the other factors that you laid out, all right, could this have been people trying to get bonuses and things like that? Yeah, but I don't believe that this was just somebody who goes, "Oh, look what I found." No, I don't believe that. All right, this is people who knew what they were looking for, and they took what they wanted one way or another, or were given what they wanted to exploit it.
This I mean, I guess anything is possible. It's just that this situation, if you all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of folks receiving copyright strikes and everything, I mean, there are certain potentials of what may be happening. I mean, based upon what you're saying, it's like, all right, if all of a sudden, at this point now you're starting to have larger and larger YouTubers, some with like over 1 million or so subscribers, actually addressing the situation. They're basically just kind of talking about what's going on. Maybe they don't feel really strong way or another. But in some respect, you're correct, MC. There are a lot more people talking about the game. There are a number of folks that apparently are not fans of some of the story choices that they've made. Some folks may be huge fans of the story choices they've made. Again, I think I've only watched some of the Let's Play through of it on the first one a little bit. And then I'm just like, okay, whatever. And then I went to Wikipedia, I kind of looked it up. I'm like, oh, the game actually kind of sounds pretty fun. I mean, a lot of folks, maybe they don't necessarily want to get spoiled. Or maybe some folks do. Maybe some folks just want to ruin everything and spoil it for everybody. Hey, I mean, to each their own. My big thing is, okay, yeah, there are more people talking about that. That definitely is a possibility as well. But
let's be honest about something. You talk about spoiling the game. The reality is, as soon as the game came, if the game had been quiet and no one had released anything, as soon as the game came out and people started playing it, it would be spoiled anyway, because people would go on there and talking about the things anyway. So,
right. Well, it's also the fact that if people see a company taking certain actions, and all of a sudden they're striking people down, even a BitChute video got temporarily pulled for a minute there. As well. So all of a sudden you start seeing this happening. It's like, okay, people probably would have talked about it for a while. It becomes a poof, and then in a week or so, probably even less after other things happen, it's like, all right, then it'll be out of consciousness until it's actually released. At this point, as soon as you start telling people, now, you're not supposed to do that. If that is the case, that's a great way to get people to do exactly what you told them not to.
Well, yeah, and in the case of let's talk about the copyright strikes in a sense here. When you strike somebody, you're affecting them, all right? Mm. You're harming that person or that group of people in some manner, way, or way or shape or form, whether you like it or not. You're actually harming that person, because you're saying, okay, I'm going to take away your ability by making a claim against you.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you're doing it for nefarious purposes, all right, because you're trying to, control the media, all right, which, let's be honest, large companies want to do. I mean, the copyright strikes from people doing Star Trek are legend, right? I mean, and they're absolutely wrong, all right? But there's nobody that has the money and to be able to outlast an actual lawsuit against what would happen if you tried to sue CBS for these kind of tactics. Okay.
I would push back slightly, not to completely derail you, but in the modern crowdfunding era, and depending on how egregious it is, that may change. But continue.
Well, okay, you think that's going to change? All right, I've seen crowdfunding, yeah, it can get up to $1 million. Great, but $1 million when you're dealing in federal court systems is what, 15, 20 minutes worth of work?
I mean, I have no idea about federal legal rates. I understand the sentiment, what you're saying, but here's the thing. This is also all being done more or less publicly as well. And here's the thing, a lot of studios and everything, they build up goodwill and stuff like that over the years. I'll give you an example, and this is something that Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, he highlighted the other day, which I found was very interesting. It's the sheer fact that there ended up being a Microsoft event where basically they were revealing things, and then, again, I didn't watch it, but apparently somebody said something that people were not fans of. Within about 24 to 48 hours, so basically just a couple of days, one of the representatives on the Xbox team basically came out, had a statement. It's like, we feel we were ill-received because of yada, yada, yada. We feel if we had just done the things we normally had done, things would have been fine. You know what? A lot of folks didn't like this. That's on us. It's our job to take in this feedback and essentially do better. And the response, again, I was just paraphrasing based upon what I know, is it was just the most generic BS corporate response that you would get back in the 90s. And in the modern day and age, it seems so stunning and brave because they weren't going out, they weren't blaming the fans, they weren't going out and they're just like, well, you're a bunch of is or isms or something like that because of whatever particular situation it may have been or somebody had experienced. That's the thing. It's like there was just a standard corporate response, and now in many people's minds it's like, good for you, company. I'm like, I remember back in like the 90s or so, like when that would just be the generic response, and we'd be pissed that they didn't give us more for it. Now we're just happy when companies don't attack us. That I don't know.
That's not a good that's not a good consequence, though, is it?
No, but
right. Yeah, there are some lawyers that do great work and will do things on pro bono. But the problem is in something when you're dealing with a major corporate entity, right, which Sony obviously is, which CBS obviously is, they have the ability to drag things out.
Well, you can always file counters, this, that, but now,
well,
and this is what
counters. It's just going in there and saying, "Look, we need to do discoveries, and we need to do X, Y, Z." That just constantly you go back in again and again and again to delay things. And even if somebody's doing it pro bono, all right, they've got to have the wherewithal, right, to be able to sustain that all the way through. All right, if they're not getting paid for it, if they're just doing it on pro bono, then they've got to have the ability on their own, because they're not making money, in this kind of a lawsuit, to continue that trial.
Now, MC. Here's the thing. Historically, I believe you're absolutely correct. Again, I am not an attorney. That was my dad, Mr. Memes. But the thing is, with this situation, I've also heard several people say that it's like, all right, we are going to monetize the heck out of this situation as long as it continues. Basically, here's the thing. If you happen to be a YouTuber, if you happen to have maybe a couple 100,000 subscribers, and if all of a sudden your videos, rather than getting, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50% normal views, you're getting 100, 150%, 200% of like your standard subscribers and stuff, and you're monetized and you're able to have streams talking about the drama and stuff. And we all know Rule 14 of the internet is everyone loves a good dumpster fire. Is this not just almost like the Ouroboros behind me? It's just continuing on. It's feeding into itself.
Yeah, but who? Okay, then in those situations, who benefits?
I actually, that's a good question. Maybe everybody. I don't know. Is this how we've gotten to the point we're at?
Well, in a dumpster fire, who benefits? In most cases, everybody benefits. All right, I hate to say that, but if you're looking for notoriety, if you're looking for marketing, if you're looking for it from the perspective of being talked about, right, where any kind of exposure increases yourself, right, both your brand on all ends, okay, and the fact that you were involved in something like that. If it causes you as a YouTuber to get more views, if it causes you as a company to sell more games, everybody wins, right?
But should things be that way? Because it seems like a very antagonistic system.
Okay, it is a very antagonistic system. But what's more is it really a mutually beneficial system or not? If it's mutually beneficial, what complaint do you have? Now, the problem, of course, is it's mutually beneficial in an overall context. But if you're looking at it from an individual context, there are certain individuals who don't benefit and actually unfortunately, reap the whirlwind.
Well, and this is the thing, because all of a sudden they'll be like, there's a report out, or, well, here's the particular deposition, or whatever. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, all I know from playing World of Warcraft is that if you hop onto the forums and you're immediately crit with a massive wall of text, a lot of people just, they don't read it. Because it's a massive wall of text, especially if it's in legalese and you have to start looking up all these words and stuff like that. It's like, that ain't a fun thing to do. It might be very important, but especially when it starts to get up to like 50 pages, 100 pages, 150 pages. It's kind of like the terms of service contracts, like even on like an iPhone or something like that. It's like, I remember starting to read the iOS terms of service back when it was only, I don't know, maybe like 52 pages or so. It's like, I got up through like page 38 or 39. And all I remember taking away was, oh, so you have no rights, you has no rights, you have no rights, we has all the rights, you have no rights, you have no rights. I'm like, I'm sure it depends on the situation. I understand the reasoning that they want to protect themselves as a company from all these different things. But now it's up to like 110, 120 pages for the terms of service, and I'm like, all right, at some point there's got to be some parts of this that are unconscionable, at least given a particular situation. It could be thrown out, but the judge wouldn't throw out the whole thing. He would only throw out that particular part right there. Again, I am not an attorney, but here's the thing. It's like, as long as you're not overly egregious, I think you can kind of get through it.
Well, what is the purpose of all right, the stated purpose, all right, of hitting somebody with a copyright strike?
The purpose for hitting of a copyright strike, again, in my opinion, is that basically somebody has taken some of your intellectual property, they've used it without an option, and basically it wouldn't conform to, well, again, I think the other party would argue that they were using it under fair use for either criticism, commentary, satire, something like that. But it's usually to protect your brand. And like if somebody's uploading videos and stuff like that from an unreleased game, or even when it is released, it's like, no, you can hit that down. It's like, I can still find new released movies on YouTube for maybe like a minute or two occasionally, because somebody will upload it and then they'll bang it right down. Why? Because that's not that person's property. So if also
let me respond to Samaj. While I agree with you that your example, right, with the Canadian government, yes, a government, if it really wants to play hardball, can drag things out for a long context. Okay. However, they have to be willing to go to the wall. Right? They have to be willing to go to, quote unquote, to the mattresses in order to do that. The fact that a government loses a case in court, or that anyone loses a case in court, isn't necessarily an example of, the money interests not necessarily winning or what they're capable of doing. I don't disagree with your concept at all, though, but I'm just pointing out that there's a single incident is just an anecdotal evidence, all right, and therefore not, you got to take it for what it's worth necessarily. But in the case that we're talking about specifically here, all right, in this instance, all right, where a game that, quite frankly, did not have as wide a reach as it does now from a notoriety standpoint, where people have heard of the game, it's a lot further now. The benefit has to go to the guys that were doing the copyright strike, because if you're trying to protect your intellectual property and sell the game, which is kind of contradictory when you think about it, all right, you're trying to give it away, but only at a price. But at the same time, if doing such a thing where now you're able to sell more, you've got more people talking, you've definitely got a hell of a lot more buzz about this coming out. Okay. Now, at the same time, I agree with you that when you're dealing with a pre-release version where it has bugs and things like that, that's always going to bother people, because people are like, well, this is the game, and if they're commenting on the bugs of the game early on, well, that could detract from sales, all right, because people will say, well, it's not worth playing and so forth, that there's major bugs because they haven't ironed those things out, and those are pre-release copies. Then again, is that the situation here? All right, are people talking about the bugs of the game, or are people just talking about
it's not really the bugs. A lot of folks seem to be displeased with the story choice that's going on within it. Apparently, some things happen between characters that people are very fond of, and then other characters that apparently people are not so very fond of.
Well, that's always going to be a problem when for example, when people write stories for books, okay, you got an author and he writes a series. Let's say he writes a series of books, like a trilogy with characters in it, right? And he puts it out there, 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, and everyone's and they're very popular. But he goes away from it and then comes back 6 years later, and then the characters are doing things that are completely different. All right. You will get
kind of like George R.R. Martin.
You will get these kinds of reactions. I mean, because you don't know necessarily where the author is thinking along and where moving along in these lines. All right. The question is going to be very simple. All right. For games, at least my limited experience, and it's very limited, is the storyline consistent, and does it continue? If you're talking about people though from a nostalgia perspective, where they've already developed an idea of who these characters are or what this character should be doing, then they're going to come back and go, wait a minute, there's a disconnect here. This character wouldn't do that because they put it out in their minds. Okay, this is the layout for how human beings are. When if a character changes, if a person, for example, in your life that you haven't met before, that you knew early on, you knew them all through high school, you really know who they are, and then you meet them 30 years later, and they're nothing personality-wise or anything else like they used to be, you're going to go, what happened to you? And you're going to and that becomes part of the dynamic now. What happened? And that you can't do that in the game. You can't go back to, okay, what happened to change this person? Unless the game, obviously you put that in the game mechanics, but I doubt that that's what they're doing, because most games are, you're moving forward, you're doing something, not trying to explain something that happened in the past, all right, without, in depth, you know what I mean, from a character perspective.
MC, I have absolutely no idea what you might be talking about at all.
Did I lose you? Did I lose?
No. I was pointing out some of the obvious things where people have been commenting over the past week. It's like, oh, that's different. What's different? Oh, he's less fuzzy. I know. Sorry.
Well, I mean, this is, if you had a friend, right, and he's changed, what caused your friend to change, right? Now, granted, I'm talking about my perspective, and my perspective is much older than most of you's.
No. We try not to be ageist here.
Well, I'm not trying to be ageist. I'm just saying my perspective comes from, I've seen these kind of things happen. I've had friends, I've had people that I've known for a long time totally radically change, and then wonder why. Okay, and they go and explore and find out what happened and what their reasoning were. These things do happen. Okay, for good or for bad, however you want to look at it. Generally, it's just that person isn't the person I remember. Right? They've now taken other aspects of their lives that are more important to them, and the commonalities that I had with them exist still, but aren't as relevant. All right, in comparison to what they would have been before. And therefore, my commonality with them has changed, has shifted to some degree. Now, in this case, the way they're doing games, let's be honest, they're trying to, all these guys are trying to stay quote-unquote hip and edgy and relevant. This is something Styx has pointed out many times, is this idea of trying to be on the edge, to be the latest thing, to, if not technically, right, then culturally or something to cause buzz around you. And that's why when I look at this, to me, this looks like a marketing ploy more than anything else. Now, it can also be somebody hacked into it and another person says, this is an opportunity, all right, to turn it into a marketing ploy, which is very possible as well.
And again, some of the initial reports were basically folks weren't receiving money in an equitable way compared to other people, as well as other people have alleged that, the game's become so woke and stuff, so they're doing it out of almost a hatred or something. I kind of go back to whole Occam's razor. I'm like, did somebody forget to use a VPN or maybe click on something that they weren't supposed to? Because I don't know. Nobody's ever done that on the internet before. I'm just saying there may be a simpler, maybe less malicious solution, even if people were acting in a malicious way.
The thing is okay, I hear what you're saying, but the problem is your response is still your response. Right. The company's response is something they determined that they had control over.
Well, this was another point, and I realize you haven't heard as much as maybe some other people because you don't really care about that much about this game or anything, is that essentially what had happened is there was a rumor of the leaks, and they could have said nothing, but essentially Naughty Dog and or Sony, they confirmed the leaks.
Which makes me think even more that people are at least trying to exploit the situation.
This is actually very interesting because they could have just let it go. People would have talked about it for maybe about a week or so, They would have moved on to other things. MC, you're starting to lead me in that direction, because it's like, okay, well, even if this is a tragedy, this is a bad situation, you try to make the best of a bad situation. It's like, oh, we got some lemons. All right, let's make some Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obvious that the company's going to do what's in its what it sees in its best interest, and what it saw in its best interest. Because let's be perfectly frank here: once something gets out, it's out. Once it's out of your control, it's out of your control. You're never going to get that control back.
Right.
I mean, that's true of music. That's true of videos. All right. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's hard to get it back in.
So the effort here to try and quote unquote, put it back in the tube, which is what it would appear on the surface that they're trying to do, knowing that can't happen. Is that really what they were trying to do? Is that really how they were going about this? Or were they trying to spread the notoriety to get it further? And there are people initially that were doing nothing wrong, that were just commenting on this, that became pawns in this game, and they got brutally exploited. And it's brutal. What they do when you copyright strike somebody just so you can exploit them, all right, from that kind of thing, yeah, it's brutal. It's ruthless.
Right, and a lot of folks, because this is the thing. I'll give you an example. The last copyright issue I had to fight was actually for the Weather Girls, for use of "It's Raining Men." So, and when you go through and you actually have to file again, I don't think it was a copyright strike. It was a copyright block or something somewhere in between there. And what it said is, basically, you need to fill out this thing, and it says you are starting the legal process there. So you got to type out your full legal name, this, that, and the specific reasons for why you had it. So in my instance, I just put, I am using this as a parody. It is set at 16% volume. None of the actual video was actually used there, while I was having a, quote unquote, a gay old time with a number of friends as we took our shirts off. And yes, we were establishing, quote unquote, the Gaydom Menace.
Yeah. Making a porn video, we know.
Dude, it was like 3.76 gigabytes, man. Every time I tried to upload it to Pornhub, it failed. The uploader has gotten better over the years. Most of my workout videos go up fine now, but dude, every time I tried, that was just a lot of data to upload. Maybe I should reduce the resolution. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then the quality goes down, right? People can't see your little chest hair.
Well, it happens.
The three or four that were there.
Oh yeah, dude. I lost the fuzziness battle. The turtle man was there. And on more uplifting news, it's 2020 is the 30th anniversary of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the OG movie, and the OG April O'Neil, I believe Judith Hoag or something like that. My apologies, ma'am. But her and the other cast members are going to be hosting on May 23rd, World Turtle Day, a virtual pizza party. Put it on your calendar.
Really?
I know. You don't actually have to put it on your calendar. I'm saying it's a thing. It boosted me up. I'm going to have to do a video on it a little bit later, so that it made me happy there.
Why did this surprise me?
Oh.
But back to this, all right? So
right.
You're looking at, are people being unfairly copyright struck? All right. Well, okay, but that's a common thing. Let's be honest. On the internet, people are constantly getting copyright struck for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, from what I've seen, it seems to be unfair. Now, there have been a few, all right, that have been upheld that people were like the one that went after the Australian guy, Bear.
Oh, Bearing?
Yeah, Bearing.
Okay.
That was to be honest, that was legitimate, right? He was using things in a slightly different manner, but people were like, okay, well, this isn't yours, and you should have gotten permission. And if how
close of it, how much was being used? Because I believe the case with Sargon may have set a little bit of precedent as well, because he took about 2.5 to 3 minutes of a 10-minute footage, I believe, added music, and then the title was transformative.
Right.
But then again, I don't think there was a ruling. I believe the case was just basically thrown out, so it was more of a procedural precedent.
In the situation that you're talking about with Sargon, he was commenting on the person and commenting on that video.
Right.
All right. In the case of Bering, all right, he was using it as a representation. Let's be perfectly honest, for himself. That was becoming, a representation of him, and he's doing it without. He's taking, basically the identity is becoming his. You see you see the point?
So was it? And again, I'm not specifically sure what you're talking about, which situation this was. But
he was using one of the bears from the children's that cartoon show.
You mean what he was actually using, like right, for his?
Right, the bear from Total Drama Island was being transformed into a representation of Bering, and that's why the copyright strike was effective, and that's why I think it was legitimate, because it was being transformed into him rather than just transformative thing. Now, if he was doing a piece on, or a parody piece on Total Drama Island, commenting on the bear, that would have been something different.
Well, couldn't he claim he was doing it as parody? Because he was doing a parody of it as himself.
He was using it. Let's be honest, he was using it as an avatar for himself.
Right. But a fan draw that. That was an original work. That was either fan or a commission and stuff. Because this is a commission.
The one he does now, yes, but the one he did initially was just a clip from Total Drama.
Oh, I gotcha. So he literally just did the clip and was using it. So you mean kind of like when I used the old Blue Eyes White Dragon as the avatar, which was totally ripped off from DeviantArt, which, although at some point I actually asked the original artist if I could use it, and he said yes.
Right.
Okay.
Now, people kind of wonder about, okay, well then MC, what about your avatar? Did you create that? No, I did not create that. I did take the picture of it, though, and that is something that I own.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at for my avatar is something that is mine.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. But just to jump back to the potential technology and stuff, because the firm, as far as I know, that's the third-party firm, MUSO. I'm hearing all these different things from all these different people. I've heard some folks say that they were in contact with MUSO, saying that, folks there don't know what the heck is going on. I've also basically seen a picture of the president, allegedly, of MUSO. Digital, basically they're the head in fighting, at least according to their website, of fighting against digital piracy and stuff.
Well, so, I think that there's probably an aspect of that does take place. But now let's be honest, how big is MUSO?
I have no idea.
Is it 4 individuals? It's probably a bit larger than that. So the idea that some people would know what's going on and what's happening and other people wouldn't, at least from my experience, all right, unless you're in the legal department, nobody wants to talk to the legal department.
Right.
Okay. So unless you have a reason to have to talk to the legal department, they're avoided like the plague, because nobody wants them to get involved in their shit in any way, shape, or form.
But this is essentially the company's thing, is
right.
Because if you're going to go around and basically go around striking or asking whatever platform or whoever it is to remove content on behalf of your client, the legal process is always going to be at least somewhere there. So maybe they have draft letters. Because what my
point was that not everybody would be necessarily knowledgeable or knowing what they're doing from that perspective. That's what my point. Right. So for somebody to say they don't know what's going on here, well, it might be true. The person that they talk to may not know. That doesn't mean that there aren't elements within the company itself that know.
Now, let me ask you this, and again, this is allegedly, there wasn't a blue check mark, so I can't confirm this, but the head of MUSO, essentially, one of his taglines on Twitter is, "That's the spirit in Jeremy." Now, We have no idea what that's a reference to. All I know is right around this time that this stuff happened, Jeremy, from the head of Geeks and Gamers, basically said he was going to go down in a blaze of effing glory at one point. Okay, so if this was a reference, again, my take on it at the time was, I'm like, oh, well, he supports your endeavors. I'm like, okay, maybe he's just being smug and trolling you. That is a possibility. Or maybe he believes that a lot of there is a bunch of BS copyright going on, and if somebody were to fight this and establish precedent, that would clear a lot of things up.
I don't think so.
Okay. I have no idea.
I would like to see that happen. I would like for that to happen. All right.
Okay.
I would like to say that it's going to clean a lot of the stuff up, but the reality is that it's not. All right. And the reason I say that is very simple. All right. Even if there's a ruling that comes back and says, look, this stuff is legal, there's always going to be somebody else who's going to come back around and go, no, it's not, and then go through as long as the process for copyright striking people exists, all right, there are going to be people who are going to abuse the system. And if you have, the means, if you're independently wealthy enough, you're going to abuse it more. All right, you have the potential to abuse it more. That's the reality. Okay, even if you come back and say, well, they were in the wrong, is that going to stop them? Does that stop people from even today? I mean, for example, you have the whole Sargon case. All right,
yeah.
Has it changed? Sargon won his case. Has it changed anything materially across the internet? Now Sargon is a tiny little player in the overall YouTube community, right? The YouTube sphere or niche, and how you want to look at it. All right. So in that respect, you can say, well, who really knows? I mean, it would have to be somebody bigger than Sargon. Well, then who? Who would it have to be? Would it have to be someone like PewDiePie?
Well, here's the thing. What you just brought up there, and PewDiePie, before a lot of this stuff, like even when he was hitting 100 million subscribers, or even now, if you just go up to just a standard person on planet Earth and say, oh, did you watch that PewDiePie video? A lot of folks would probably say, who? Because 100 million people is a lot of people, and there might be some other folks from more related current event stories over the past few years. But aside from that, it's like, dude, there's over like 7 billion people on this planet, man. That's still a vast minority of folks overall right there. But I look at this, and I'm like, okay, what's actually happening here? And with the Sargon case in general, okay, and again, I thought it was tossed out. I didn't even think there was like a full ruling, like there was necessarily, or maybe there was a prejudgment. Again, I am not an attorney there, but even if there's precedent that's been set, other people need to cite that precedent in their defense or their claim as well. So if that happened, that's great, but unless you're within that community and aware that that's actually happened and been a thing, a lot of folks might not do that and stuff. Dude, this is a thing. Just because somebody's a doctor, they don't necessarily know everything within medicine. To know everything within medicine is impossible for a human being until maybe Elon Musk gets his neural net thingy going. Then that'll be interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a ruling, whether you look at it or not. They basically ruled against her with prejudice in the Sargon one. All right, they basically said there's no merit to this case. That is a ruling. It did go back into a ruling. He just dismissed the plaintiffs. When he said he dismissed it, he's dismissing the plaintiff's case. That the case wasn't dismissed on a technicality, saying that somebody didn't do something procedural.
Okay. So there is an established judicial proceeding, if we would there. Again, I'm not an attorney, but what Mitch brings up right here is very interesting. And he says it wouldn't be an issue if the strikes were not being weaponized. And that's what, at least to a lot of folks, it does seem like, and that's why it seems to have gone on, because even up until probably about a day or so ago, I was still hearing about different channels receiving strikes on it. And again, if it was a copyright claim, like if you happen to show a quick image or something like that, if they just want to take any potential revenue, that is one thing. However, if it's actual copyright strike, that is a punitive function as well, because you get 3 strikes, you're out. If this happens to be, like for some people, their primary source of income as well, That seems like a big problem. That sounds like you're trying to get someone fired from their job. And it's like, okay, I suppose you can do that. That seems to be heavily frowned upon these days. Well, unless maybe you're part of another group that wants that to happen. But that's the big thing there.
Let's be perfectly frank here, though. Who are they going after? Are they going after the person who leaked the video? Are they going? Is that the person that's being held accountable?
They are currently. They said they've identified the individuals, and when I hear that,
okay, go ahead.
Okay, basically they've identified the individuals, and they're currently within, as far as I understand it, the legal process. So now, if they've identified the individuals, what does that mean? Does that mean that they found the source of the quote-unquote hack, if you would? Did they find out who had leaked it, if you would? Because as far as we understand right now, according to Sony and everything, as far as I understand it, this is a hack. Basically, somebody came in, they took this, they put this out, and as far as I understand, they're going through the legal process there. Now, where are they from? Are they from the United States? Are they from Canada, China, Russia, South Africa, Libya? It's like, we don't know. We have no idea. So they're in the process of that. It's just if you're going around, and MC, I am starting to think and have some questions about some of the actions, because Sony is not, they are not a stupid company. They are extremely smart. They are very diversified. Maybe this is a complete F-up, but at the same time, the sheer fact that the leaks came out, they acknowledged them. If they acknowledge them, that makes it real.
You say that they've identified the individual and they're taking legal action.
Individuals, that's how it was written.
Right. You say that they've identified the individuals and they've taken legal action.
Okay.
Right? That's what you're reporting. Who are they?
I have no idea.
Why don't you know?
I have no idea. They say because they're currently within the proceedings, which also.
What do you mean they're within their proceedings?
No. But that is an interesting question, because very often, if it was an employee or a former employee, they'd say it was former employee X that did this. Because when they say they've identified the individuals, have they actually identified the individuals? Or is it maybe, I don't know, maybe an online group, perhaps the hacker known as 4chan? This is the thing. Did they find out the location from where it was hacked from? Did they find out who had actually brought it? Or we found where it went, and now we're trying to figure out whom these individuals are?
Have they actually taken action?
That's what's being reported.
Did you see the action?
I do not.
Okay.
I've seen responses.
Mm-hmm. When I see someone actually take action or actually threaten action against a specified individual, we have identified who the individuals are and we're taking action. Okay, so you filed a lawsuit against them, or you've reported them to the police. Okay, if that's the case, if they said we've reported them to the authorities, okay, I would say, okay, I can understand why you don't want to release the individuals, because depending upon how the legal system comes out, you could be held liable. Okay, that would be fine, but that's not what they said, is it? No, they said that they're taking action. Well, if they're taking action and they've identified individuals, means they're going to try and do it within the legal sense, and they're going to try and do it within not the criminal side of the house. They're going to try and do it within the civil side of the house. That's what this indicates. At which point you're like, why aren't you naming the individuals? You're going to have to name them when you take them as a lawsuit. When you actually issue the lawsuit, they have to be named. Why aren't you doing that? Because you're not really taking action. Okay, they're claiming something.
No, but MC, technically, isn't this how you're supposed to go about the process? Because it seems like
why would you
far more often than I think I would like, it seems like something happens, people initially go flare it all over social media, and then maybe at some point they do the other thing. I thought, like you said, if somebody's going to file a police report, you file the police report. If somebody is going to basically report this to the authorities, this, that, or the other thing, you do that, and then aren't you supposed to typically be quiet if you're going to court about something rather than blaring it out to the world? I realize it's 2020 and apparently that's not what we're supposed to do, but I don't know. What say you?
No, look, it's the reality is here. if they're going after people in a legal context, okay, this is not how they do it. This is not how you go about it. You don't announce, yeah, we've identified and we're going to go after them. Okay, you've identified them, you're going to go after them.
Okay.
Why would you announce that? If you're not willing to announce who those individuals are, okay, why would you pre-announce we've identified the individuals, but we're not going to tell you who they are? Now, if you are going to sit and go, we found the individuals and they launched a lawsuit, they would announce it when they launched the lawsuit. Not that we identified individuals and we're going to take action. That is someone that's making a corporate statement of zero or no value, because you don't know, nobody knows, and what always happens in these cases is no one's held accountable.
But
or it's something internal, or it is something internal, like you said. In which case, I was right to begin with when I said it's an inside job.
I'm just looking at it, and again, I would find it hard to believe, and much more evidence would be necessary. But the sheer fact that I'm like, okay, they number one, there was a leak. Okay, whatever happened, it got out there. Number two, you confirmed it. Okay. And then you start striking, like if you're taking down the information and spoilers and stuff like video cinematics, I understand that. But then if folks are just giving their opinion on it, you start striking them down and stuff. So basically, a lot of folks are like, wait, you're just trying to shut people up for expressing their opinions. F that! So it's like, oh, okay. So now you've also created additional controversy around this as well. And I'll be straight up. I actually looked into the game. I'm like, the game looks fun.
So they succeeded.
MC, again, I'm just basing it off of my lived experience right here, and I'm like, I'm getting a lot of checks on these things. So I'm not saying what you're stating is the case. I'm just saying, at least in my instance, it makes sense.
There are certain old saws that always work, and one of what is follow the money.
Yeah. I mean, it ain't bad. It ain't bad. You follow the money. It usually explains a lot. And this would be very interesting because I remember The Last of Us 2, they did actually have criticism for it. And you know what? I think, didn't we or somebody else cover this about a year or so ago when they announced like the protagonists in it were going to be like a radical, like racist sect of like band of Christians, extremists or something like that? Because I do think I remember some folks covering that, at least within the past year or so, and I'm like, well, that's interesting, I guess. I mean, as long as you're not portraying all Christians and stuff to be like that, but then again, you're also talking a post-apocalyptic world where basically a fungus is going around to basically make semi-zombie creatures. So I'm like, okay, it's a game. But, I mean, at this point, it seems like everything seems to have been political, and...
Well, I'm not trying to... Well, political... Okay.
I got in trouble with this yesterday on Facebook. I was trying to do the political pretzel twingy, and then I got called out. I said I was sorry.
Political or social, I mean... I think that... I understand that there's a lot of interplay between the two. Okay. A lot of the things that people made political were actually social dynamics. They should have been left in the social realm. All right, but that's not the world we live in. Okay, people have brought it into politics because with politics, you can involve yourself. You can stick your nose in anything and everything if you really want to take it to that level. Okay, so was this a social thing? Was this a political thing within the sphere that we currently live in within the United States? Probably not necessarily, though, intentionally, at least not initially. All right, but then again, who owns Sony?
Sony? I don't know. Isn't it publicly traded?
Okay. Well, who has the majority stake in?
That's a good question.
Who controls Sony? Right. Those are questions that'll need to be answered. What what things have Sony done? What is their corporate structure like?
Owner, Sony Corporation. Number of employees, 18,000. Parent, Sony Corporation of America. Okay, I believe that's who the... yeah. SCOA, something like that was what was coming up with copyright strikes. I think there was an I in there, so maybe it was Sony Interactive Entertainment. Okay, who bought Sony? Sony Mobile Communications, Sony Ericsson. This is a multinational. Okay, standard Google jargon that we think are answers. Okay.
Well, Ericsson was initially a Swedish company, right? So
Right.
when you start looking at these these multi conglomerates that have mixed and batched and all over, all right, to some degree, depending upon how their corporate structure is, either the primary corporation or the parent company actually has total control, or generally they have very hands off control.
It's more of a
Right.
valence thing, yeah.
It depends on how they're going about it. In this case, however, everyone's looking at it from, okay, it's Sony. Just like when people look at it from Disney. All right, Disney is far more hands-on. They're far more directives from a cultural standpoint that I've seen, right, where they get into the day-to-day operations of pretty much their entire portfolio. They are involved in it. So it kind of depends on how they're looking at it and what they're trying to
Right.
do with it. Now, as far as these copyright strikes, let's be perfectly honest. If we're going to buy these copyright strikes right now, and are they legitimate? I don't think any of them really are legitimate. All right, with the exceptions of the ones that were saying, okay, we're doing the games early. That's the only one you can say, look, you got to take this down. You can't be showing things that we haven't, on an early release.
Right.
Now, as far as
Right.
the commentary goes, though, I'm sorry, but it comes down to the same thing. If you can copyright strike people for a commentary and things like that, then why can't the U.S. government sit up there and shut down freaking Julian Assange for copyright?
These are some good questions. These are things that we should think about. But as far as I'm wondering, just for your last thoughts, because then we're coming up on an hour here. Thank you for your time. The big thing is, okay, as far as, and again, I am not an attorney, but basically copyright strikes were levied for Sony, whether it was MUSO or whoever it may have been. Okay. Now a number of folks have challenged these strikes. Okay. So now many of these people, they've ended up having a response. So now, as far as I understand it, they need more specifics for the reason why they are striking it down. So regardless of whatever happens, it's like either they don't respond, these strikes go away. Okay. Or they do respond, and now they need to specifically cite what it was. Well, there was a very small pixelated image somewhere in back there that's from our unreleased content. So now they're actually going to need to explain why people are getting strikes, because this has been one of the biggest complaints for the YouTube copyright system for a number of years. What did we do wrong? Let us know what we did wrong so we don't do it again. Because at least if you let us know what actually happened, it's like, okay, well, we won't do that again. When you're saying, because what was even put was Last of Us 2. I assume just because that's a generic box that they may have had as I'm fading in and out of existence, in that basically, okay, they need to fill out this little thing. Because on those forms, you only have so much room. And I think part of that is just because of how it was coded and they were trying to make it as efficient as possible, or just maybe it wasn't thought of at the time. Now, when they need to specify whatever goes back and forth, because I've gone through maybe not just strikes, but like the claims and stuff before, where it's like, we're going to block it. So I don't care if you take the revenue, because, okay, it's your work. Hey, make a few bucks off it. I'm not even monetized. But if you see this there, it's like, okay, well, we don't actually have this. Maybe there was nothing there. But I'm very interested, this is going to happen over about the next 10 days or so, as if they do respond and continue to re-levy these strikes. Because if somebody was showing an image or a video, they may have a claim for that. But like you said, if they're just doing it on commentary, on stuff that is now basically in the public domain, commenting on something, then you can pretty much strike down almost anything. So I'm curious to see if these strikes just go away, or they actually come forward and are like, okay, here is the reason. Maybe this situation may be some of the impetus for YouTube, and maybe, I don't know, maybe some of our politicians or elected officials to maybe, I don't know, maybe update some legislation or something like that to actually address these issues that have been ongoing for a number of years. Yes, law always lags behind technology. This is a thing. Let's fix it.
Well,
So
if you're going to try and fix something like that, it's not going to go in the favor that a lot of people want it to. Because if you're really going to fix something like this, you're going to have to fix the copyright laws. And if you're going to fix the copyright laws, all right, there's going to be a lot of people upset. Because one of the things is you're going to have to redefine what intellectual property is. And there's a lot of people that do not understand, all right, if things change, just how much they personally have to lose. That's why they haven't done it yet. Let's be perfectly honest. The main reason is people are afraid of losing what they have. Now, should it happen from a social perspective, from society? Would our country be better off and society as a whole be better off if we redefined what intellectual property is? In my opinion, yeah, but my opinion is very narrow.
well, that's the thing. We all have our opinions, and very often it seems that we, and maybe some of us, assume that other people just kind of think the way that we think, and we all have different lived experiences and everything. We've all come from different situations and have our own lives. So, I mean, I'm not sure any person thinks the exact same as anyone else, but that also makes us individuals. But, yeah, that's some more Velociraptor stuff for another day. But, MC, final thoughts on the issue? Anything you want to put out there or anything?
I agree with you in that we definitely should have a revision of the copyright laws. These things do have to get looked at, but quite frankly, one of the problems that I personally see with even suggesting that in this time frame within the United States is the fact that our legislative branch is not acting as they should, because they're not acting as representatives of the United States or the representatives of the people who put them in office. And so I think there's a dynamic there that has to change before you're ever going to be able to fix legislatively in an appropriate manner the copyright legislation. So that's one of the reasons why you don't hear me, pounding on it like I do some other issues.
Well, I mean, let's face it. If you're dealing with the exact verbiage used for copyright laws and stuff, that's not always as sexy as political proverbial slayings and stuff like that. That seems to be more satisfying.
I've never heard of my commentary as even remotely related to sexy in any way, shape, or form. There, so it's kind of quite an interesting dynamic.
Well, as long as we're not dropping the Galapagos on the floor. But thank you all for watching. Peace out, everybody. Have a good day, and long live the elbow bump. Oh, I hit the thing. The thing has been hit. Yeah.